touch or we do not interfere with what the departmental committees bring before the Budget and Appropriations Committee, because they're the ones who have interacted with the departments of various ministries. They're the ones who know why a certain area needs more allocation than another one. And so for us, it was just to look at the basic questions of equity areas and also asking a few questions, but majorly adopting what the departmental committees also brought before us so that we can move together as a house and consider what they have brought before us. Mr. Speaker, it is important to look at some of the things that have been funded in 2024-2025, and one of them is that security docket is one that has received more funds, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to say that it is important for us to, as a country, to ensure that our people are safe and secure so that they can live their normal lives and continue with their day-to-day activities, Mr. Speaker. It is important to note and to bring to the attention of this House that we might be noticing that the North Rift is actually, and Mr. Speaker, kindly, consultations can be in lower tones around me so that I can continue with my contribution.
The Honorable Kaluma, do I get the feeling that you are harassing the MP for Samburu?
They are consulting in high tones, Mr. Speaker. And naturally, he has a loud voice. All right. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to bring to the attention of this House that generally the areas of North Rift, apart from Baringo, have experienced some form of calm. But I want to bring to the attention of this House and the country that even though we are not receiving attacks, Mr. Speaker, we have so many people who are displaced from their homes, and therefore we cannot say that we have peace in those areas until people go back to their homes. They can farm. It's actually raining right now. People can actually go back to their normal lives. That is when we can actually say we have peace in the North Rift. And so the funds that have been allocated and increased to the security docket, I hope it will ensure that people are relocated back to their homes and we can actually experience peace in that area. The money for restocking, the 1 billion that has been allocated to the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, Mr. Speaker, I do hope that even as we consider people who have been affected by the drought, the people who have been affected by insecurity, Mr. Speaker, should also be considered and be given a priority when the restocking process happens. I do, because I know very many families who lost all their livestock, who actually are living beyond poverty, who have children in school, who cannot pay their school fees, Mr. Speaker. And so I do hope that this 1 billion, and we'll be following up with the Ministry of Livestock to ensure that those who have been affected by security issues will be given a priority when the restocking process will be ongoing. Mr. Speaker, one of the things I have said severally is that Kenyans do not mind to pay taxes, and they're actually paying their taxes, Mr. Speaker. But one thing that Kenyans have been looking at is where their money also goes to. Mr. Speaker, they're looking at which areas are we funding. Are we funding areas that actually rejuvenate our economy, areas that cushion them, especially issues to do with social areas, Mr. Speaker, issues to do with health, that in a country like Kenya, where we are celebrating over 60 years of independence, Mr. Speaker, we should never have issues to do with vaccines, Mr. Speaker. We should not have a mother having a problem to go and deliver in our hospitals, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on issues to do with education, we should have free universal education in our country. And one of the things that came to our attention, Mr. Speaker, is that most Kenyans are not aware of the new model of funding our university education. And what we even saw in the public domain is that we have so many children who qualify to go to the university who have not applied to join the public universities, Mr. Speaker. We need to interrogate and ask ourselves, what is the issue? Is it that our children and the parents are not aware of the new funding model? Is it that it is more expensive? We need to get those answers as a house, Mr. Speaker. So issues to do with health, issues to do with education, issues to do with money for the elderly, it has been increased. We do hope that the money can be released early so that the vulnerable children also in our communities can receive this money on time. Mr. Speaker, when we were interrogating and in our interaction with Treasury, one of the issues that kept coming up is the issue of exchequer, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we might fund all these issues, Mr. Speaker, and sometimes it's not a matter of saying there is no money. It is just where are our priorities. When money is collected as a country, who do we fund first? We don't have to wait until we see people on the streets demonstrating because their money has not been paid. We don't have to see demonstrations in this house, Mr. Speaker, that NGCDF has been delayed. Up to now, we're going to the end of the financial year, Mr. Speaker, and we have not received all the funds of the financial year ending 2023, 2024, Mr. Speaker. And so it is important that even as revenue is collected, then the exchequer should also be released on time, Mr. Speaker. Issue to do with equalization fund, it has been factored in this budget. In the last budget, we saw, and even arrears, 10 billion was released, Mr. Speaker. One of the two issues that I want to raise with the equalization fund, Mr. Speaker, we know the critical role that it plays in our areas, which for a very long time have been left behind in terms of development. And this money is now implemented by our governors, Mr. Speaker. What I would like to say is that there should be prudent use of these funds by the county governments, ensuring that the projects that are actually funded, the projects that are proposed are life-changing projects, Mr. Speaker. It is not fair to put a road of 5 million, a road of 3 million, or even 8 million through equalization fund, Mr. Speaker. It is important for us to look at cross-cutting issues like big dams, water, big roads, Mr. Speaker, which will actually change the lives of our areas, of the marginalized areas, so that this equalization fund can actually have significant impact in our areas. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I have talked severally on the issue of school feeding. It should not be fathomed again as a country that a budget can come with a zero or a negative on issues to do with school feeding, especially for the ASAL areas. We know that there are some children who actually go to school to just eat, and then thereafter, then they actually are educated. And education is an equalizer and is the one that actually will bring these areas to the same level with other parts of the country, Mr. Speaker. And I also want to encourage and to implore to those who are actually thinking of ever moving that money back to the ministry from NACONEC, which is the implementing agency, Mr. Speaker, not to think about it, because NACONEC has been ensuring we get money, we get food in our schools and on time, Mr. Speaker. And so if something is working, then let us make sure that we do not reinvent the wheel. The 2.3 million children who actually benefit from the school feeding program, let NACONEC, let it be their business every morning, every evening to ensure that the food can get to our schools. Let the Ministry of Education deal with other issues, curricula, capitation, and very many other things, university, and very many other issues that they can deal with, Mr. Speaker. And with those very many remarks, I do support.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me also to appreciate the chairperson of the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the committee itself for a job, I would say, that has come, and it is now our duty as members to just look at what the chair presented. And Mr. Speaker, first to applaud that indeed we are still handling devolution, and I'm happy Lesuda and team went for mediation and they were able to give counties 400 billion. Mr. Speaker, as everyone has said, as we talk about our deficit, which is very critical, because I know Kenyans are watching. Kenyans would wish to see us say what we say and actionize what we are saying. And I think that's what the committee has done for us. And I'm hoping even going forward, by the time we come to the next financial year, God willing, we shall be now talking of 400 billion cuts. But for now, the 200 billion is critical. When we look at the education department, Mr. Speaker, the education sector goes with a whopping 700 billion. What we need to ask ourselves is, if we are funding education the way we are funding, then the ministry should come out and now stop this thing of delaying with every capitation from our basic schools, JSS, secondary schools, and university. Because that is how all the schools, Mr. Speaker, have found themselves into pending bills. And so there's something between appropriating the budget, there's something we should start looking at our ethics and governance. How do we ensure then, in terms of the exchequer, removing the money, we are able to ensure we don't get into pending bills and delayments, especially for schools, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are happy the feeding program is back for the schools. We were very worried. But now let me go to the votes, Mr. Speaker, and I want to look at the vote for health. Mr. Speaker, you remember here, there's a time we really pleaded with the committee, and we said, let us see if we can retain Linda Mama. But now we've been told it will go into shift. Ours is to ensure, how shall we ensure women are able now to get shift so that they go back into the program that we had for Linda Mama. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, we are losing so many women now again on maternal health, that you are giving birth. We lost a girl, she went through surgery, 3 days later, the girl is gone. She's left the baby and all that. I think we have to look at this vote and ask ourselves and be very clear that the universal health we are talking about is a universal health that will take care of reproductive, maternal, newborn children, infants, and even the adolescents as we speak, Mr. Speaker. And so it is something that we should not ignore and just leave it as it is. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the vote 1092, it's on the transport rail. I can see after we went through the floods, and we should agree, we've retrogressed because of the floods. We shall have to spend a lot. And on the rail transport, there's a lot to be done. And therefore, I agree for them to receive the resources, but I will also want to plead with Kenya Railways. Mr. Speaker, I realize when we were given the standard gauge railway and the locomotives, today when you enter, I believe our Kenyans now traveling through that, those locomotives are now gone. And I know they are making profits. Those who are running those the business must start refurnishing and ensuring we have new locomotives coming in to carry our people properly, so that we also feel proud of what we are doing and what we are saying. Mr. Speaker, when I look at the water resources, the vote 1109, as Nairobi, I think the issue of sewer needs to be now sorted. I realized when we had floods, everything got mixed up. Today, I doubt whether our waters are as clean as we are thinking. And so we have to look at the sewer line and ensure that indeed we now rectify the issue of the sewer within Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, when we talk of the JSS interns, and I want to thank the Majority Leader what he has said. Indeed, when you are a teacher, I will tell you, yesterday I went to a school. I felt very sad. I met the teachers in the staff room. They were having their break. Everything was on the table. They have peeled everything, just thrown on the table. So I asked them, this is your staff room. You're supposed to be a role model for this child who is going to build her life, her foundations through you to become a Kenyan who is responsible. How can you leave your staff room to be such dirty like this? And those are some of the things we are saying, Mr. Speaker. And I want to tell TSC, yes, we have the interns, but also they were on probation. They have to know that, Mr. Speaker. You know, in public service, Mr. Speaker, we say when you're on probation, we look at your attitude, we look at your temperaments. That is why you're put on probation. And so if some of them will be left, they should know it is based on the attitudes they had brought in, on what the behaviors they were doing. Because definitely you will want to see our children learn in an environment. And this is a new model of CBC where we are saying we are trying to bring in a new model that will help our children, Mr. Speaker. And therefore it has to have also a relevance of appreciating that you are the role model. You are the one who takes care of this child and to mold this child to be a better Kenya for tomorrow, to be a better person who will come to give services to the people at the time. And so, Mr. Speaker, that one, we have to be very firm, and the people have to respect that. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of agriculture, I know we talked about new KCC, and we want to see the dairy farmers also benefiting. On the issue of sugarcane, I think it is important also for us to tell ourselves that indeed sugarcane farmers have suffered for a while. It is important for us now to start looking at all the agricultural sector. And I want to thank the President for bringing in the agro-entrepreneurs that they were launched. And I'm hoping they were launched to come, and now I've seen we've given the crop mitigation vote quite some good money. And I'm hoping we are going to help our farmers down there to see benefit of why they should do farming. And if we are saying agriculture is our pillar, let us stand firm, all of us, and even look at where there is land, Mr. Speaker. For example, where people are not using their land, the military can also come and lease, but do farming and bring back that food, and people will still buy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the road sector, and this is something KRA must look at. You see, Kenyans are very smart, and they will not allow themselves to be drained the way we want to drain also. And so you realize we lost money in the fuel levy, Mr. Speaker. We were unable to collect enough what was needed. Why? Because we pulled in and we pushed Kenyans to the wall, and they decided, why not? Let me just leave my car, let me think of how to survive. And so while we are doing this, let us try to embrace a culture that will give a conducive environment for Kenyans to appreciate that I will want to do this to also pay this tax so that it can help my country. Mr. Speaker, as we look at audit, in all this, even in our own audits of NCGDF, we are going to find a problem, Mr. Speaker, with the auditor because of this late exchequer thing. And you'll always have your books being queried because of late of exchequer. And so we want the exchequer to help us so that we come out of this. With those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you and to thank the House and to thank the committee. Thank you.
The Honorable Kaluma, followed by the Honorable Kihungi and the Honorable Eve Obara, and then Honorable Oundo.
Yeah, I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me start by congratulating the Budget and Appropriations Committee for the good work they have been doing in this term of Parliament and which they continue to do. And in thanking them, Honorable Speaker, let me also thank the various departmental committees who also contribute in a fundamental way to the budgeting process. And my hope is that all their views were taken into account by the Budget and Appropriations Committee in finally, bringing the budget documentation before the House. Honorable Speaker, our problem is not budget. Our problem as a country is about budget implementation, which has failed consistently, Honorable Speaker, to adhere to the national values and principles of governance prescribed under Article 10 of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, we pass budget. And let me start by saying there is a good reason as to why the budgeting authority was moved from the Treasury, from the Executive, to this House. This is the National Assembly. It is the assembly of the nation through their representatives. The thinking is that when we are budgeting and sharing out the national cake, I would be asking, what about Mutembei? Honorable Nyikalu would be asking, what about Seme? My brother, Honorable Roko, would be asking, what about the constituency of the people I represent? And we do that during budget. But you know the problem, Honorable Speaker, is that we send monies to the ministries, to the government departments and the sectors within them, bulk without itemization. Honorable Speaker, that is something we need to work on if we want to achieve the real reason as to why the budgeting authority was moved to this House. Honorable Speaker, I'm very happy that the Budget and Appropriations Committee, on behalf of this Parliament, has proposed that we are putting apart money to employ all JESS teachers. And let me disagree with the speakers who have just spoken that we should again be cherry-picking who among these JESS interns should be employed and who should not be. The fact of the matter, Honorable Speaker, is that what happened with the employment of the last 56,000 teachers in serious democracies would have occasioned this House to proceed and move all those commissioners out of office. They should have been removed. And this is what we are talking about. You employ 30 people. These JESS interns are waiting to be employed. But people other than JESS, not JESS, Teacher Service Commission, are distributing employment forms outside there. And you see it in people including CSS. You see it in people including politicians. How do you ensure equity in that arrangement? Where some people are waiting for interviews by the Teacher Service Commission, which ideally is an independent commission, yet individuals who have no mandate around recruitment of teachers are walking around with employment letters. No wonder, Honorable Speaker, when you go to areas like ours, teachers are retiring without ever being employed. Teachers are retiring. I have over 200 teachers have written to TSC, I've even written to the President. I have over 200 teachers who graduated in 2000, 2001, 2004. They cannot get a chance to teach and to serve the nation in the classrooms bringing our children out. And yet in some areas, Honorable Speaker, up to teachers who graduated in 2022 are already recruited. What do you want JESS interns to do when they sit waiting to be employed? They are told there is no opportunity, and outside there, Honorable Speaker, people are being employed in FINROLs. What do you want them to do? We must develop a deliberate policy, Honorable Speaker, on employment of teachers, which says teachers will be employed on a first to graduate, first to be recruited basis, wherever they come from. In any event, they have been all trained, they have gone through practicals. What is this other interview you are doing again? Honorable Speaker, look at the area of energy. We sat assisting you, Honorable Speaker, the other time on Committee of Supplies. We are reading everything. After that, my entire constituency, including schools which were established before I was born, cannot be electrified. Not a single electricity project in this ending financial year. Yet we passed a budget for how much? All street lighting programs stalled in Mutembei. And then when you come back, Honorable Speaker, you find all this money has been diverted to some single constituency. What are we talking about? We are developing an inequitable nation against the national values and principles of governance. How can it be, Honorable Speaker, that have been in this Parliament passing budgets and duly authorized by the people under the Constitution to deal with budget? This, Honorable Speaker, is my 12th year of budgeting. No single tarmac road in Mutembei town constituency. And by the way, people looking at us are clapping as we are sending, did you say $500 billion money for roads, which they don't see? Year come, year go. The fact of the matter is that we have to go back to where President Kibaki left this country. President Kibaki would not implement a project, Honorable Speaker, and you are with him, without the people at the planning ministry looking at which project are we going for? How is it viable? Which one do we do next? So that we can, make them, economically more viable for the entire nation. And so under President Kibaki, they would come and say, we are moving a road from Lamu through to Isiolo, through to Ethiopia. Not just to open that area, not as a favor, but to harness the national potential in that area. Under President Kibaki, he would come here, Honorable Speaker, and say, we need such and such roads in Kisumu because it is a city. Look at what is happening currently. We're just doing things haphazardly. You remember President Kibaki would be approached by a politician in a rally, the way our presidents move around now, and then you tell them, your president, we want this and this project, and he tells you, but you're the ones passing budget. Did you see it in the budget? It is not properly planned. It cannot be implemented. We have gotten into a situation where, again, the leadership of the nation has been left the entire budget by Parliament. A leader visits Mutembei, we dance dodo to them, and you're told a road will be cutting from here to here. You go to a county and you say, we'll be giving you 500 kilometers of roads. Have you thought through to consider what those 500 kilometers would be doing to contribute to the national economics beyond these areas? I therefore want to say, Honorable Speaker, that going to the future, as Parliament, we will be required to at least come with a baseline in terms of minimums which can go to areas. I mean, how does it please you when you say you are at 100% electrification, when other areas are totally dark, and yet we want to develop the entire country? And that is why we bring debates like 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling, 1 kilometer. Do people engaging in this debate, Honorable Speaker, have they visited northern Kenya? Let me tell you, the day you visit northern side of the country, you will thank those Kenyans who are keeping our territories there to remain ours. There are places, Honorable Speaker, even used bottle of water you are requested to drop. And by the way, it is very useful. But those people need to be there so that the territory of Kenya, as defined in the Constitution, remains intact. How much is it to move a road, a tarmac road, from one corner of Northor to the other corner, one constituency alone? How do you compare it to moving a road from one corner, for instance, of Mutembei town constituency to the next? I just need 7 kilometers and I've crossed. And so we must have a balance which ensures equity. Honorable Speaker, as we budget going to the future, let us remember that devolution is placed among the national values and principles of governance for a reason. There are places who only began seeing this thing called national resources through decentralized funds like CDF, now under devolution. Honorable Speaker, we still take too much money, which are meant for devolved functions, to the national government. And so when you see the corruption under the health ministry, you see the corruption under the water ministry, you see the corruption under agriculture ministry, it's because these functions are devolved, but money is left here idling and therefore available to be stolen. Honorable Speaker, my last concern is in relation to the institutions we established to underpin good governance. Consistently, year after year, money is going to independent offices and constitutional commissions has been reducing. And we need to begin thinking, why was Article 249 of the Constitution placed there if we can be reducing that money? Because that provision says you shall adequately fund. I have oversighted commissions' budgets where the whole travel budget is less than 500,000. And this is a commission of over 11 people. And we are passing them here bulk. We are saying we should move that way. What are we doing with the independence of the judiciary? Can we give them money so that they are financially independent to do their work? Honorable Speaker, there will be much more to speak in terms of the policy directions, but I think time has come for Parliament to take charge of the budgeting function, or we tell Kenyans Parliament cannot do it contrary to what they envisioned in the Constitution. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Kiungi.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I start to support the budget and also commend the committee, its chair, and all other members of the committee for the good work they have done. Mr. Speaker, I want to just touch on the issue to do with roads, whereby we have a lot of pending ongoing projects which were left, like Mau Mau. And Mr. Speaker, like now I cannot get home. Because of the works that were left undone, it has, due to heavy rains, there were landslides. I cannot access my home right now. But Mr. Speaker, I guess, and I wish to pray that they allocated 178 billion, much of the works will go to the pending works. But Mr. Speaker, as we recommend the committee for budget, We have a committee that is working very hard, but is going through a lot of hardships, a lot of attacks, and this is the committee that will fund this budget, the Finance Committee. Mr. Speaker, this budget of 3.9 trillion, 1.2 trillion is going to pay debts, that is consolidated funds, is going to pay the debts. 1.5 is going for recurrent, and around 700 is going for development. Then the equitable share of around 381. Mr. Speaker, as we look at the budget and the correction of revenue for last financial year, 2023-2024, we realized that we had targeted to correct around 2.7 billion, but we didn't manage to reach 2.7 billion. I think we are estimating to get around 2.4 billion. The funding of this budget, we are expecting to correct 2.9 billion, and yet we have not achieved the 2023-2024 target. Mr. Speaker, I think we must now come up as a parliament, as we recommend the revenue correction, and as we await the implementation of this budget. This budget will not actualize its implementation if we don't manage to correct revenue. And the issue of correction of revenue is tied with the finance bill. Mr. Speaker, we need to have a healthy debate as members of parliament. As we recommend and say how good the budget committee has done on allocation of these funds, we must also agree and sit as parliament together and agree on how we raise these funds. I pity the chair for finance. That guy is going through a lot. But this is a guy who is working day and night to see how we can be able to achieve this. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say the issue of not managing to actualize the budgets that we have already passed, or maybe we are about to pass, or the allocations that have been done, is mostly based because of the revenue correction and the targets that maybe we have put. Mr. Speaker, I want to say, today I listened to the former Prime Minister who is targeting the position of AU, whereby, Mr. Speaker, we are looking forward for him to get that position. I had a time because I was busy, but I passed by and I got his, in his stay when he was addressing the nation. He talked about making sure that this country manages to exploit its cash crop or exports to African countries. And he touched something that he talked about, having road networks that can be able to assist a tea farmer to be able to take his tea to Central Africa. Changing the route for ships, whereby because the ship mostly move from Mombasa, going to Middle East, then goes back, the route maybe, the route mostly doesn't go through South Africa. And our markets for tea are in West Africa and mostly are in North Africa. But for us to make our tea to get to West Africa or our tea to get to North Africa, we have to use a ship which has to go through Middle East. It takes 3 months. But if we can have road networks, as he was putting it, we have a road network from through Mombasa, cutting across to Lagos. Like the issue we are talking about may be the issue of Lapset, whereby Ethiopia can be able to use our Lamu port. We have to look in a broader way on how we can be able to make this country make foreign income through its exports. Because our farmers, like tea farmers, most of them are losing hope. But this because the market that we are depending is the colonial market that is controlled by West, and we cannot be able to trade with our people because you cannot transport tea by freight. Like the other day, there was a round between Kenya and Lagos, but only a few maybe bags of tea that were taken by freight. But to be able to access that market, we need to have a road network. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, as Parliament, we must come up with the strategies on how this country will be able to achieve the targets of the revenues that we proclaim that we raise. If we can't, let's go by the facts. Because the 2.9 trillion that we are targeting, Mr. Speaker, chances we will not be able to raise. By not raising 2.9, most of these projects that we are looking forward maybe to achieve, we will not be able to achieve. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, KRA is still domiciled or using the colonial or the old way of collecting revenue. Mr. Speaker, the other day we developed the expressway. Expressway is very expensive driving in expressway, but because of ease of paying, you don't care how much you are paying. But KRA, if you import a container, you take 3 days to be cleared. But if there is the way of paying revenue, most people will be willing to pay. Therefore, I think we must also call upon KRA. They must make the issue of paying taxes very comfortable and very easy. But now, the way they are military, somehow everybody fears KRA. You don't want to be seen by KRA. That thing makes people to move maybe or the country to lose a lot on issues to do with the revenue collection. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we support the budget and we support the allocation, but we must go ahead, Mr. Speaker, to be part and party on the revenue collection that is through the finance bill that's coming next week. Let's not run away from it, because if we run away from the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, we will not be able to achieve all these things that are in this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also add my voice to this debate. And at onset, I want to support the report. Mr. Speaker, I also want to appreciate the committee and with the leadership of the chair. And I want to say that I like his humility and the manner in which he handled the committees and individual members as they approached him on issues. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, on matters that affect education, the committee where I sit, knowing full well that education is the greatest equalizer, Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate the fact that 80 billion has been added to the budget of the education docket, bringing it to 700 billion. Mr. Speaker, we've looked at and already covered as free day secondary school, the JSS, the school infrastructure, university and TVET, and we are also aware that the school feeding program has been reinstated. Mr. Speaker, as much as this school feeding program only caters for the ASAL area, I would wish, and my desire going forward is that this matter be brought forward again so that the entire, as was proposed by a member, that all school-going children be given free food or free lunch. Mr. Speaker, for those of us who come from rural constituency, you may not know, but half of those children, more than half, actually go hungry without lunch. Whether they go back home, there is nothing to eat, and you can see them that these children did not have anything to eat. The Budget Committee, I can see the Vice Chair is here. This is a matter that should be taken up as a matter of urgency. The late President Moi was able to give free milk to all the schools. We, as Kenyans, must and should be able to appropriate funds for our children in school. Mr. Speaker, I also want to appreciate the fact that we have allocated money, 4.6 billion, for the recruitment of our interns. And I am happy that the 2 cohorts are going to be considered and not just the one that was initially proposed. So that now we will have 46,000 interns being recruited from the 1st of July to the permanent and pensionable terms. And I'm happy too that all of them will be recruited, and there is not going to be, and I underline not going to be a second interview, that they will be recruited because they had already been interviewed. Mr. Speaker, the issue of Jomo Kenyatta Foundation, previously a publishing institution, state corporation publishing institution, is going to be a one-stop shop for the management and administration of bursaries is a very good idea. We have so many bursaries within the Ministry of Education, different sections with all manner of bursaries. And if all this is consolidated under the Jomo Kenyatta Foundation, I believe that the whole process will be better managed. And I thank them for coming up. Ministry of Education, yes, we also supported this proposal, and it's now been budgeted for 100 million additional. Mr. Speaker, despite all this happening, I have seen that each constituency has been given 50 million for electricity. I had an opportunity of visiting the Ministry of Energy, and I was shocked, Mr. Speaker, to see that one constituency was allocated 400 million. 400 million. And this is what we are talking about on matters of equity, Mr. Speaker. Let us not be selfish. Even if the members of the committee or leaders are given certain allocation, let it not be over the board, as what we have seen in some cases. Let it not be over the board. 400 million for one is too much. And yet, I heard you speak that even schools, all schools, do not even have electricity. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not only on energy. If I remember clearly, when the Minister for Transport, I think it was the Minister for Transport, he was here. We can check the handset. When he said, when people were complaining about allocation of roads to certain individuals, what did he say? It is beyond him, because it happens after what we have done. So the issue, my colleagues, is how can we rein in this selfishness amongst us? It will start with us. If we want to stop it, we must stop it here. That yes, you can be given favors as committees, but not to the extent of, what I can call criminal. What I can call, I didn't say they are criminals, I said I can call criminal. Mr. Speaker, finally, I am happy with the idea that constituencies are now being considered as the reference point for the allocation of resources. And this should have happened like yesterday. The 290 of us who sit here, the 290 we represent constituencies, and we know each and every corner that even as money is being allocated, we can tell you whether it was used or not used properly. So thank you very much, committee, for coming with us this great idea to reduce inequality. Finally, implementation of budget. Mr. Speaker, this is key. We cannot be budgeting here, year in, year out. And we are hearing of suppliers not being paid, budgets not being honored. Where did the money go? Why do we have pending bills of billions of shillings and yet we have given out money? What is happening? What is happening? Why should our suppliers suffer out there not being paid? And we are sitting here talking of 2 trillion plus budget. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I would propose that in line with Article 221 of the Constitution of Kenya, estimates and revenues and expenditure, I propose, should be looked at the same time. So that as we look at the expenditure, how much money we are going to spend, we should be looking at these two together. Making decisions would be so much easier. And by the way, this is good practice across the world. It is not going to happen in Kenya here only. It's going to across the world. We should be looking at both at the same time. An issue was raised here on why that did not happen. The response was that it was done 2 months before today. But why was it done 2 months? Why was it being done 2 months before? Why can't we look at it now? As I look at this budget, I will be also to look at where this money is going and how it is being spent. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, and I once again support. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was starting to get worried. Probably today was a day for affirmative action, where they gave priority to the so-called marginalized, for whatever reason, whatever that amounts to. Honorable Speaker, as required under the Constitution and common practice, a budget estimates must be presented to the National Assembly for deliberation and approval, or so passing, before they are implemented. It has been an annual ritual, Honorable Speaker, but as I've always commented, and I keep on commenting, it would seem that even though the Constitution bestowed the powers to make the budget on National Assembly, but there are too many extraneous and other forces outside there that eventually shape the outcome of the budget. Honorable Speaker, I stand here looking at the budget as the estimates have been presented, budget estimates, and obviously the first glaring observation that we need to make is that there has been an increase over the limits set under budget policy statement and the limits presented by the National Treasury to this House that has gone through various processing to get where we are. A quick review, Honorable Speaker, indicates that this Honorable House or the committee is proposing an increase close to 60 billion or 600 billion, actually 600 billion beyond the figures that had been presented by National Treasury. Honorable Speaker, I keenly listened to the Chair, Budget and Appropriation Committee, and I truly sympathize with him. Sympathize with him that probably the data has been presented paints a very rose picture, while the reality is the complete opposite, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it's estimated that the economy grew, actually the economy grew by 5% in 2023. There has been optimistic projection that will grow by 6.5, some 5.5, but the reality, and looking at the dispatch from the World Bank released today in a meeting in China, has downgraded the growth, GDP growth of this economy to remain at the same level of 5%. So essentially, Honorable Speaker, we are stagnating, we are not moving. And the argument is so simple, Honorable Speaker. The growth rate of 5% last year was fueled with increased production in the agricultural sector. We have already reached the highest level of production we can reach. The rains, whatever much it rains, will still produce the same. So the agricultural sector is likely to record no meaningful change. So therefore, the rate of economic growth will remain the same. The status quo will remain the same. So to project a budget that is optimistic or based on projected increase in GDP growth rate is a fallacy and is off the mark, Honorable Speaker. That's why I say I sympathize with him. The data he was being given, well, obviously, anybody can cook data, anybody can play around with the statistics to fool any particular case. Honorable Speaker, we projecting to collect 2.94 trillion the coming financial year. We projected almost the same amount, and we did not hit anywhere close to that figure. So this bullish view that our deficit will only be about 630-something billion, this particular financial year we are going into, again is based on the wrong assumption. We will again have another supplementary budget. And Speaker, I want you to go on record. Remind me this day, the number of supplementary budgets are going to be brought here to rationalize the budget, because the assumptions under which this budget is being made are wrong assumptions and will not really work at all. And that's why it's always important, Honorable Speaker, that we better be realistic. We get it wrong at the point of budgeting. And why do we get wrong by the point of budgeting? Because the government, so to speak, the executive, so to speak, has not been in a position to clearly have a better look. What do we need to do? What do we need to do to get the proper figures to move forward? Honorable Speaker, you cannot grow an economy without production. You cannot grow the economy without manufacturing. You cannot grow the economy without moving goods and services in the economy. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the budget estimates, the productive sector, the blue economy, industry, which comes under manufacturing, small enterprise businesses, investment, Honorable Speaker, has been only allocated a paltry 35 billion. Yet, you want industry, manufacturing, and the related sector to contribute 15 to 18 or 20% of the GDP. I mean, it does not just make economic sense. It doesn't. You must put your money where you can generate higher returns, where the rate of return, where the marginal utility is beyond 1. Honorable Speaker, I do not see how we are even going to generate the so-called 2.9 trillion from which sector? We have increased taxes in the last financial year. We have not been able to hit even the target. Yet we continue building on the wrong fallacy. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, in the wisdom of the framers of the Constitution, devolved some certain functions to the counties. Funds, budget must follow functions. Honorable Speaker, how do we explain the Ministry of Health has got a whooping allocation of 131 billion, which is close to 5.5% of the national government budget? What's the rationale? Yet health is a devolved function, yet when you go to most hospitals in the rural Kenya, there are no drugs, there are no provisions, there are no gloves, there is literally nothing. Are we undermining devolution? Are we undermining devolution? Even the small amount the Council of Governors were complaining about, this 131 billion would have actually plugged the gap, would not have even gone to mediation. Honorable Speaker, it is time we must rationalize our budget. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, why 4.8 billion Office of the Deputy President? What for? You mean there's too much mandazis, that there are too many visitors, there are too many saved people, there are too many intercessors, there are too many prayer functions that has to consume a whooping 4.8 billion. Yet it's part of the presidency, and if you add the 9-point-something billion under the presidency, we are close to about 16 billion on one office alone. Office that does not produce any goods and services, office that does, the rate of employment is very minimal. Are we really serious without a budget making? Honorable Speaker, in the same office of the President, there's 400 million put there for coffee reforms, tea reforms, and drugs, fighting drugs. Yet, there's a Ministry of Agriculture. There is a Ministry of Trade and Industry that is dealing with the coffee reforms. The Ministry of Agriculture dealing with tea reforms. Ministry of Interior dealing with drug menace. Is it not duplication, a waste of resources? What kind of a government are we trying to prop up in this event? Yet, when it comes where it matters most, we have very many issues. Honorable Speaker, also looking at the various issues here, and I want to echo the comments that have been raised by our colleague, Dr. Ivo Bara. Honorable Speaker, it's so embarrassing for a member of parliament to keep on hoovering